All right, everyone. Welcome to the show. We have Karl Alomar as our guest today. Super excited to learn from him and share some great experiences. Thanks for coming, Karl.
Hey Jay, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, why don't we have you start with sharing some of your experiences that you've had over the years as an entrepreneur and operator and investor?
Sure, yeah. Many years, unfortunately. Hopefully, I wish it was less, but it's not. Um, yeah, I started my career. I kind of went into the work environment following an education in engineering, which I think really set me up to move into technology. After grew up in the UK, but moved to the US after I got my degree. And after a couple of years, I really kind of found my feet in entrepreneurship. Started my first company in, I think, 97, ended up exiting in 2000. Right in the middle of the bubble burst, kind of went through all the drama related to that, but luckily was able to exit and get out. And then stayed with that company for another year before I decided to go do an MBA in Columbia in New York. After my MBA, I set up my second company. It was a fintech business, um, a global business. Did pretty well with that. We grew it over a space of 5 years or so to about 140 million in revenue. We did go through the bubble, the financial crisis with that one. So I kind of have a habit of hitting, the right categories at the right time, apparently. But again, we got through. We built a pretty good company. As I said, we landed about 140 million in revenue in 2009, and then sold the company in early 2010. Couple of years later, after kind of taking board seats and investing and doing kind of things that you do after an exit, I actually met the founding team of DigitalOcean and ultimately joined them as COO right as they were launching their first product, and helped build that business essentially from the ground up over a 6-year period to around 250 million run rate, 500 plus people. And obviously since then, for people that know that category, the company went public, has done really well. And I think at this point is running somewhere in the range of 650 million run rate. So really, really good growth, good solid company, something to be really proud of. Um,
Yeah.
Following DigitalOcean, I really made the switch into investing, and I joined a couple of brothers who'd founded a fund named M13. We launched Fund 2 together in 2019, early 2019, and now we're investing out of Fund 3, and really just trying to put a lot of the experience and kind of firsthand knowledge that I've been able to gain over the last, I won't say how many years, but trying to, give that to other founders and other entrepreneurs and really try and help people build, businesses that I would personally be super proud of. And, I think we've got a family of incredible founders and incredible portfolio of companies and, excited to see where we can help them go.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing portfolio. I was looking through it earlier today. It's a very impressive list. It's amazing. So one of the things I wanted to ask, uh, Warren Buffett has this famous quote of being a businessman makes me a better investor. Being an investor makes me a better businessman. What are the things you have learned as an investor that entrepreneurs don't know and need to know? What
Yeah.
do you wish they knew?
I love that. I love that. Something that I think smart founders always try and do is put themselves into the mindset of the investor to understand exactly what the opportunity looks like from the perspective of the investor. I don't think enough people do that. So
Yeah,
one thing that I've really learned is I've really learned the mechanics of investing. Like, why do you invest? What are we trying to do? What is the power law? What is the opportunity for return? And then framing, for the benefit of raising money, framing your business to accommodate things that investors need to see to complement and build their portfolio. Also
yeah,
understanding, what is the portfolio of an investor and what's the likelihood that the category that we're building in is a complement to the portfolio they already have. So I think you can be a lot more strategic and a lot smarter about who you're talking to, how you're presenting the business, and how to really find the right partner ultimately that's gonna, whose portfolio and whose personal experience is going to complement what you're trying to do as an operator.
yeah. I love it. Um, that's amazing. Is there anything that is like a common mistake that you see that entrepreneurs make as they're talking to investors? I think a lot of our listeners are kind of hitting that point where they're either through a pre-seed seed and they're probably getting to. I've seen this in my experience. At each of those phases, you get to kind of larger groups, more experienced groups, more professional groups. A lot of times you're shifting from angels into institutional investors. What are some of those things you're like, don't do this?
Yeah, yeah. It is, it's very, very interesting to kind of see the breadth of different types of approaches and different ways in which people, think about investing. Think about getting investment. I would say one of the things that's a big no-no that we always have a little chuckle about on the investing side is when a seed company is like, uh, overselling, pitching itself as, I am your next decacorn, I am this, I am that. I think there's a certain amount of confidence, but humility that needs to go with you
Yeah.
pitch a business. There needs to be confidence in your ability to build something really special, but there needs to be humility in the sense that, you have a lot to prove, you have a lot to get done. The people that try and pitch their businesses as the de facto next decacorn in their category and the winner of a category that is already overcrowded with God knows how many people, like those things just put you off right away. I think another thing really to note is investors invest in people. So sometimes when a founder has a really good business and they feel, maybe somewhat self-assured, they can become very arrogant in their process. And what you've got to understand is the person
Yeah.
investing in you or the person you want to invest in you, partly investing in you because they like you and they think they can work with you. And if it's a very, aggressive and arrogant approach you take in terms of how you're negotiating or how you're managing the relationship, it's very easy to put off an investor. One thing to always remember as an entrepreneur is once an investor decides they like your business, the next, like, whatever period of time of diligence that they go through is all about trying to pick holes in it and figure out why they shouldn't invest in it. And so
Yeah.
if you give them reasons to think about that, if you give them reasons to not invest, then those things are going to work against you over time. So I think it's very important that you really think of it as a courting period on both sides. They need to sell you on them. You need to sell yourself to them. And you need to make sure that you're building a partnership that actually works and that mutually you can work well together on.
I love that. I always say when friends call up or people I know say, I have this idea and it's going to be, we're going to make billions. I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Have you ever made
I don't
billions
think,
before? Do you know what it takes? Not
yeah,
easy.
it's,
So,
it's not easy.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's great. I think that's a hard thing for entrepreneurs sometimes is remembering that like, hey, this has got to be a two-way thing. It's got to be a good relationship. There's got to be those I mean, you're really all of the investors in the different businesses that we have, you're really married in many ways. I mean, I talk to those people often, fortunately, but also sometimes unfortunately, as much as my wife.
Yeah.
You just spend a lot of time together. You're building over years and years and years. And so I try and find that work-life balance, but I'm sure you have the same thing where it's, hey, let's find that work-life
Yeah.
balance, but we're going to talk a lot. We're going to be in a lot of situations together.
Well, it always helps to
What are
love
some
what
of,
you do. So, you're going to
yeah,
get into something you're not going to love, then it's a lot more difficult than, if
yeah,
you feel like you're calling a friend, then it's okay that you talk with them every week, every week or every other day or
yeah,
through crises. Like it's a friend, it's a friend. So I think keeping
yeah,
that in mind in terms of how the dynamic works is important.
yeah. No, I love that. What are some of those positive things that you look for in entrepreneurs? Those traits that really kind of stand out to you? I love the humility. I think that's a huge one. What are some other things that, as you look at potential investments, that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think when you talk about the entrepreneur themselves, one of the prerequisites of any great firm is an entrepreneur that can build a great team, and then one of the prerequisites of
Yeah,
a great team is being able to deliver inspirational vision. And so, one of the key thing, and this really is translated into how you pitch your business. You need to sit in front of an entrepreneur that truly inspires you. So, from an entrepreneur's perspective, you need to make sure that you're truly inspiring the investor and make sure that that reflects on, I mean, ultimately you're going to use that skill set in hiring people, in, getting your big clients, in whatever it is you're doing in your business. But that ability to inspire is so key. It's a very, very separate skill set to the kind of category knowledge and expertise and the things that I think are also very important. But, you can't be the greatest, financial mind in the world, but have zero EQ. Because if you're not able to deliver that in an inspirational way, doesn't matter how good you are, you're not going to get the backing that you want. And so
Yeah.
there's got to be that interesting balance between category skill and inspirational, just the ability to inspire and lead. Now, often what we
Yeah.
do is we ask ourselves, hey, do I picture this person running $1 billion company? Because that's ultimately what you want, right? Any founder is not just sitting there saying, yeah, I'll build it to 50 and then I'm going to give it to someone else. And as
Yeah.
investors, we're not interested in founders that want to give it to someone else. We're interested in the founders that want to run $1 billion companies. And so even though it doesn't always work out that way, that's the goal on the onset, right? You have to kind of feel confident that maybe it's a young person, they haven't had all the experience in a while, but can they learn? Can they grow? Can they inspire? Like these are kind of key aspects of that. Another thing we think about is also just what is the team we're investing in. So there's always going to be holes, but that
Yeah.
core team that you're walking on is going to be the heart and soul of the business. It's going to drive culture. It's going to drive like directionally how they want to build. So if you get a team that's very, very product heavy, they're building through product. If you get a team that's very, very sales heavy, they're going to build through sales. So it gives you kind of a sense of how this company is going to grow and build. And then identifying the holes and making sure that you're aligned with the founders on, hey, here are your obvious holes. Then what's the strategy to fill them? And it may not even, if it's an early seed round, it may not be in that round. It may be, hey, we got to patch those holes until we get to a Series A because we can't afford the right people. And that's
Yeah.
fine. But just having that kind of cognizant ability to kind of lay out how you think this thing is going to grow, I think is also very valuable.
I think kind of as you were saying before, that ability to talk as a friend and talk through challenges. I think that sometimes I even have noticed with myself that early on I didn't want to call and say, "Hey, we're having a problem. Like we're going through a challenge," and I wanted to act like everything was perfect
Yeah.
instead of saying, "Hey, these are the things we're going to do, and here's how we got to fix it," and some of those things. And so I think that is a key piece. And I think also, I love what you said about that vision and that inspiration, because I think that goes actually hand in hand with the the mistake of saying we're going to make
Yeah.
billions. The people who are inspiring, they're worried about solving problems more than they are about
Exactly.
this is going to be, we're
Yeah.
just all going to be rich.
Some
it's
really,
it's a
a
great
really,
irony.
a really interesting adage that I've always lived by and I've always felt like has really worked for me is, do what you love and do it to the best of your ability. The money will come. Like if you
Yeah,
are the best at what you do and absolutely love it, then you will be successful in your own right. Now, obviously, depending on the category and what you're doing, that might be different levels of success, but you will get the satisfaction if you try.
yeah,
And so, if you're just building a business based upon the idea that I'm going to make money, it's usually very rarely is that going to work. But if you're building a
yeah,
business thinking, hey, I want to build something that I really love and I really feel is special, and I actually truly believe everybody else will love it because it's so special, then you're going to build it from the heart and people will buy into that. And you'll hopefully be able to build a business that truly can get traction. And it doesn't always work and that's fine. But when it does, it really does ring true and it makes, creates, a great business potentially.
yeah. I love that. I think that that is a huge difference that you can see usually pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So that's great advice. What you think back to when you started as an entrepreneur, what has gone to plan? What has gone completely not to plan? Maybe nothing went to plan. What are some of those lessons? I think that for me is something I like thinking. I was thinking about this morning. Like
If you think,
I graduated college in '08 and hasn't all gone to plan.
yeah,
It's
I
been
mean, if you
crazy.
think the ends justify the means, then they've done all right. But the process of getting there has
Yeah.
not always been easy. I would generally
Yeah.
say the one consistency is that nothing ever goes to plan.
Yeah.
You'll hit your numbers, things will happen that are right. I've had incredible growth stories, but there's always, you're always fighting battles. I think anybody that thinks they're going to go into it, it's going to be easy is just mistaken. You're just constantly fighting battles. I already gave you kind of a quick brief, but, my first company had built it in the tech bubble, was doing fantastically well, just getting all the hype, everything you can imagine. I was young. I say there wasn't really as much of a focus on business fundamentals back in those days. So I was just building for mass, not
Yeah.
really thinking about those things. I wasn't trained to. But ultimately, we were able to raise money, we were able to build a business, and ultimately we were able to sell a business. But when the bubble burst, I had to change. We had like a $20 million round of funding. Back in those days, very, very different numbers. So that was like a solid Series B funding, $20 million round
Yeah.
of funding. And literally the day I remember we had a fire alarm in the office and we all had to go outside to the parking lot. And then I get a phone call on my, brick cell phone, if anybody actually
Oh, yeah.
offers those days. And it was the lead investor. It was the morning I was supposed to go to their office, sign the final contracts and get the wire transfer. And it was the first day that the market took a massive dive. I think if you people who know that time, it
Yeah.
happened in like 3 stages. And so it was the first stage of that process. And they called me and they're like, "Hey, we can't close. Our whole portfolio has gone underwater and we're like, we're scrambling right now." And suddenly, the day you're going to get money, and any entrepreneur would know, trust me, you've already spent that money. You've
Yeah.
got you've got a full team, your burn rate is up there, you're getting money. So you like, hey, 2 months run rate is not a problem for me, because I know I'm going to get, 2 years or 3 years of money like in the next day. And so suddenly, had to let go of half the company. We had to restructure. We had to do all these things to kind of just settle the business and make sure that we had time to find an alternative outcome. Luckily, we were being courted by 2 or 3 people. The market was still at that point not at its bottom,
Yeah.
and we had 2 or 3 neat groups that were kind of courting us to say, "Hey, don't raise money, come sell the company to us." And so we just moved super quickly and decisively. We're able to get a deal done. It wasn't at the optimal value we would have wanted it to be, but it was an exit and it was good, and everybody got money in their pockets, and we were able to continue the business. And so that was an incredible challenge. I faced a similar thing in 2008 with fintech. We had about $100 million worth of credit lines that we were lending against, and we were all backed up by AIG as our kind of underwriter of record.
Yeah.
If you recall, in those days, your graduation year, AIG was like on the verge of going under. All the banks that we were working with were beginning to freeze their lending practices. And we just battled through the next year to be able to keep cash working. We had AIG, the president of AIG or whoever it was, like was writing letters for us to the banks to say, "Hey, we're good. We're not going under. Your security is safe with us."
Oh my
And
gosh.
I remember my wife now, we were dating at that time, but my wife now, would tell me like, I was in New York, had a head office in London. We had operations in China as well. And I would wake up like 5 in the morning or something to start my conference calls in London. And by the time she got up at like 8, I was green and pale and like the world's going to end today. And every day was the same thing. And then by the end of the day, we'd work through it. And then the next morning was the same thing. And it's incredible. It can be incredibly challenging. But you got to stay calm. I think the key thing that worked to my benefit is I've always been a very, very calm leader. I've rarely had knee jerk reactions. I always kind of stop and breathe and think before I take action.
Yeah.
But I am also relatively decisive. So I don't, I can kind of logically get to the right direction and then move with it. And I think that's been a real asset that I've enjoyed and has helped me through the
Yeah.
difficult times. Digital
Yeah.
DigitalOcean had its own issues too, but that probably went more to plan. I mean, that is incredible
Yeah.
growth story, but we had our momentary issues for sure through the whole process. No doubt about that.
Every startup
Yeah.
does. I think that's the one the one consistency, and I think that's what I love when you meet with entrepreneurs who have been through that. They they always kind of have that like, it could be worse.
Yeah.
I went through '02. I went through '08. I went through
Yeah.
'05.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as it could be.
It's a breeze
So
right now.
yeah,
Yes.
this
But
isn't
not
that
really,
crazy.
because I know a lot of people having a very, very hard time raising money and stuff, but it's definitely not what it was in '08 or 2000.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's pretty amazing. Um, as you think of some of those times, as you think through some of those things, as you said, some people are going through those challenges. I love the stop and breathe.
Yeah.
don't panic, don't knee jerk reaction. Any other advice for a founder who is in a similar spot?
Yeah.
They were expecting the next round to go through. Now it's not. They're in a tough spot. I have a lot of friends and contacts who are reaching out and saying they're in this exact situation. They're like, I thought my Series A was going to go through last month, and now it's not. My burn's too high. What are some of those like principles of wisdom you can
Yeah.
you can share with people?
That's a very, very specific problem. And I know it's commonplace today. So it's very relevant. Let me talk more on the macro first. I think that,
Yeah,
something to think about that doesn't solve, but that helps in a whole wide range of different problems you might face. And this really goes back down to who you choose to take money from. And it's about surrounding yourself with the right people. So, in my first company, I had a makeshift board of people that really wasn't helpful. And I really was on my own when I was trying to solve the problem. And it was just a very, very, there were four founders, but in reality, only one of them was kind of there helping me in that process. And you really, really
yeah,
felt like you were isolated. And it was like, I have no help. I have no one really, everybody's telling me different things. No one's being really productive. I solved that in my fintech company because I had the most incredible board you could imagine. I mean, I had the ex-head of Fitch Ratings, the ex-head of HSBC Asia. I mean, it's a fintech company with those type of people on the board. It was unbelievable. And they were incredibly helpful, incredibly supportive. And through all of the challenges of a frozen banking environment, they were helping me navigate and think about how to solve, on the supply side. Demand side was going through the roof, but it was the supply side for us that was a real problem. And so they were just incredibly solid. They put incredible amount of faith in me as a leader, and they made me feel very supported and secure. And they gave me very, very good advice. Um, I think DigitalOcean, we had a little bit of a mixed bag. In some cases, it was incredibly supportive. In some cases, it was less supportive. But ultimately, if I were ever to do it again, or even boards that I go into, where I advise founders I work with now is build a board that you really, really admire, really trust, really lean on, who are going to be there for you. And so that works in every scenario. Now, when you, associate that to, fundraising, which is a specific issue that you highlighted, at the end of the day, you need people who are going to be in the trenches with you. And, I'm doing this with companies I sit on the board with now. It's like, hey, let's navigate. Let's figure out, are we delivering the right message? Do we need to help, you know, revise the way we're pitching the business? Are we speaking to all the people we can speak to? How can we help get introductions? How can we really, really trying to kind of
yeah,
be part of the problem set and solve, or rather part of the attempt to solve the problem set? And I think you need those types of people around you. And I've been on boards where they're like, hey, it's a problem. Okay, I'm out. I'm going to go focus on something else. You go figure it out yourself. And you got other boards where it's a problem. Well, I like you and I really believe in your business. Let's see if we can help you solve it. And you need them.
yeah,
And so surrounding yourself with the right people, make sure. I also see sometimes founders are very hesitant to build their boards and are trying to negotiate out of the board positions. But frankly, for me, boards have always been, or can be, if they're built correctly, incredibly helpful. And when
yeah,
you try and go it alone because you're trying to maintain this concept of control, which I don't really think boards change that much, but um,
yeah,
sometimes there's this illusion that, oh, if I have a board, then I'm going to lose control. What ultimately happens is in the bad times, you don't have the support. So,
yeah,
the concept of losing control is also a concept of losing support. And so I think that thinking about who you want at the table with you and making sure you have them, you engage with them, you work with them, you allow them into your business in a way that, what we do at M13 is really focus on trying to be proactive. So we want to be in the business, understanding your problems before you even see them, rather than, as you said earlier, waiting for you to have a big problem to come and tell the board that now there's a big problem. And we
yeah.
don't want the rose colored glasses. We want the reality, because that's how we can be helpful. And that's, I think, the type of board member that founders should really try and secure.
That's amazing. Great advice. I think that's very accurate. That a lot of times entrepreneurs avoid that for whatever reason, and I think that's very wise counsel to build that group around you that can help you
Yeah.
get through those tough times.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up, anything that you're working on now that you'd love for people to go, any calls to action, go help with the charities or something that you'd like people to go do as they're hearing this, learn more about you. What's kind of those calls to action that you'd like to
Well,
throw
my
out there?
general call to action would be a good human. Very, very general, but
Great.
be a good human. But we're always looking for great founders and great companies, and I'm always excited to talk to people who have vision, even if it's not something we end up investing in. So please share your ideas and your thoughts with us. Best way to reach me is probably, you can go to our website. It's m13.co, or you can just find me on LinkedIn, and that's probably the best way to connect with me and talk to me. But would love to just see what people are working on. Don't tell me you're building $1 billion business. Show me you're building $1 billion business, and I'd love to be a
Yeah.
part of that. So I think that's the thing that would be the best for to connect with everyone that's out there.
Love it. Well, thank you again for all of the counsel and wisdom. It was hard earned, I'm sure, over the years, but appreciate you sharing it with the listeners who are out there trying to grind and be better entrepreneurs. So
Sounds
thanks
good.
again.
Thanks, Jade. Appreciate the time.